My name is Tammy Wade. I'm 31 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I learned that the person sleeping beside you can be more dangerous to your trust than the strangers breaking into your home. I own a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I work in pharmaceutical sales, and 4 years ago, when I bought the place, I spent extra money on security cameras, motion sensors, alarms, and one silent panic switch disguised beside the kitchen lights. My boyfriend, Ethan Caldwell, moved in 18 months ago. We'd already been dating for about a year. He worked remotely for a marketing agency and always said my security system made him feel safe whenever I traveled. That became painfully ironic. It happened on a Saturday, around 10 at night. We had just finished a movie. I went into the kitchen for water when I heard the back door splinter inward. Not open. Splinter. In the reflection of the microwave, I saw a masked man entering with a gun. I had maybe 2 seconds. My hand moved to the disguised panic switch. Click. No siren, no flashing light. But the emergency signal was already going out. Then 3 men were inside. 2 had guns. 1 carried a crowbar. They forced Ethan and me onto the couch. Ethan was trembling beside me. The leader demanded cash, jewelry, electronics. I don't keep much cash here, I said. He raised the gun. You live in a house like this and there's nothing worth taking? I have a mortgage. I'm not rich. Take the laptops, TV, car keys. Just don't hurt us. I was stalling, waiting for the police. Then the leader looked between us. We're taking one of you. Ethan's breathing became ragged. The robber continued. Insurance. 1 comes with us. The other stays here and doesn't call the cops. Then he pointed at both of us. Choose. I turned toward Ethan. For 1 insane second, I was already preparing to volunteer myself. He looked terrified. I loved him. I thought that was what love did it, made you protect someone before protecting yourself. But Ethan moved first. He raised his hand, pointed directly at me. Take her. I stared at him. The robber actually laughed. Wow. Ethan pointed again. Take her. No hesitation, no apology, nothing. 2 men grabbed me. Ethan? He looked at the floor. They dragged me through the broken back door. 1 shoved me onto my knees, while the other started zip-tying my wrists. My mind wasn't even focused on the guns anymore. All I could hear was his voice. Take her! Then sirens erupted nearby. The robbers froze. The leader ran outside screaming, Move! 1 of them shoved me down and all 3 jumped the fence. Police arrived moments later. I had bruises and a scrape on my forehead, but I was alive. Ethan eventually came outside wrapped in a blanket. He rushed toward me. Tammy! He tried to hug me. I stepped back. You pointed at me. His face fell. I was scared. So was I. I wasn't thinking. That's the problem. What? You didn't need time to think. You chose immediately. He started crying. There was a gun in my face. There was one in mine, too. That's not fair. I almost laughed. Fair? You volunteered me as a hostage so you could stay safe inside my house. I panicked. No, you made a choice. The police separated us for statements. When I told the officer exactly what Ethan had said, he looked up from his notes. He didn't comment. He didn't need to. 2 robbers were caught that night. The 3rd escaped temporarily. I didn't stay home. My friend Rachel picked me up around 3 in the morning. Ethan missed 10 times before sunrise. On the 17th call, I answered. We need to talk, he said. I stared out Rachel's window. Yeah. 5 days later, I agreed to meet him. Ethan thought he was coming to explain himself. What he didn't understand was that I no longer needed an explanation. I had already seen exactly who he was. 5 days after the robbery, I met Ethan in the parking lot outside Rachel's apartment. I didn't want him inside. I didn't want another conversation somewhere, comfortable enough for him to pretend we were still a couple. He climbed out of his car looking exhausted. You have to understand, he said immediately. I was terrified. It was survival instinct. Survival instinct is running, fighting, freezing. Tammy! You didn't freeze. You pointed at me and said, "Take her." His face tightened. I didn't mean it like that. How else could you mean it? He started crying. I've apologized 100 times. What else do you want? I want you to admit you made a choice. He stared at me. In that moment, you chose yourself over me. Maybe that doesn't make you a criminal, but it tells me what happens when things get bad. His expression changed. So, you're breaking up with me? Yes. Over one moment? One moment where you were willing to let armed men drag me away? We've been together almost 3 years, and it took 5 seconds to destroy my trust in you. He tried arguing that I couldn't know what I would have done in his position. He was right about one thing. I couldn't. But I know I wouldn't have volunteered you before you even had a chance to speak. I told him to move out by the end of the week. That was when his sadness turned into anger. This is my home too. No, it's my house. I pay rent. You contribute $600 toward utilities and expenses. Your name isn't on the deed. I'll talk to a lawyer. Go ahead. He left furious. I thought the worst confrontation was over. I was wrong. Within days, Ethan began telling people his version of the robbery. According to him, he had frozen from trauma, barely understood what he was saying, and I was cruelly throwing him out because he had panicked. His mother called me furious. My son almost died, Tammy, and now you're punishing him for being traumatized? He didn't freeze. What? The robber told us to choose a hostage. Ethan pointed at me and said, "Take her." Silence. Then she said quietly, "I'm sure he didn't mean it that way." There's only one way to mean it. She hung up. Then mutual friends started contacting me. Fortunately, the police report contained my statement. Once people learned what Ethan had actually said, most stopped defending him. One of his friends even messaged me privately. She told me Ethan had admitted the truth to her. He simply believed I was overreacting. That hurt more than another apology would have. He still saw himself as the victim. Meanwhile, police caught the third robber after he tried breaking into another house and chose the wrong homeowner to intimidate. All 3 were now in custody. 2 weeks after our breakup, Ethan finally moved out. His father came with a truck. I made sure I wasn't home. Rachel stayed there instead. She later told me Ethan cried while packing and repeatedly said, "I can't believe she's doing this to me." Not once did he say, "I can't believe what I did to her." When I returned that evening, the house felt hollow. I changed the locks, changed the alarm codes, deleted Ethan's access to the cameras. It felt symbolic. New locks, new codes, new life. Then, 1 week later, a detective called me. "Tammy, we need to ask you something about the robbery." My stomach tightened. One of the robbers had started talking in hopes of getting a better deal. According to him, they knew things about my house before entering. The location of the back door, the general floor plan, approximately what electronics were inside. "Is there anyone who knew the property well enough to provide that information?" the detective asked. I immediately thought of Ethan. I hated myself for it. "He lived here. Any problems between you before the robbery?" I hesitated. "We argued about money sometimes." "What kind of arguments?" "He wanted more involvement in my finances." I paused. "And he wanted his name added to the deed." The detective went quiet for a moment. "I want to be clear," I said quickly. "I'm not accusing him of arranging anything. We understand. We're checking every possibility." They questioned Ethan. And somehow, he found out I had spoken to them. He called me screaming. "You told the police I was involved." "I told them you lived here and knew the house. They're treating me like a suspect." "I never accused you. You're ruining my life." Something inside me went cold. "You pointed at me and told armed men to take me, Ethan. If you had nothing to do with the robbery, the investigation will prove that." "I wasn't involved. Then you have nothing to worry about." He hung up. I contacted my lawyer afterward and began saving every message Ethan sent. A week later, the detective called again. They had found no evidence connecting Ethan to the robbers. He was cleared. I actually felt relieved. I didn't want another betrayal hiding beneath the first one. But clearing Ethan of a crime changed nothing between us. He hadn't arranged the robbery. He hadn't known those men. He hadn't planned what happened. And somehow, that made the truth even simpler. Nobody forced Ethan to betray me. Nobody coached him. Nobody gave him time to prepare. A gunman asked him to choose, and Ethan showed me exactly who he was. Soon, I would have to repeat those words under oath in a courtroom, and someone unexpected would be sitting there listening. A few weeks later, I sat in a courtroom and told the story again. The prosecutor wanted every detail: the broken door, the guns, the silent alarm, the zip tie around my wrist, and the moment the leader told us to choose. Then came the question I knew was coming. What did Ethan Caldwell do? I looked straight ahead. He pointed at me and said, "Take her." Saying those words under oath felt different. That night, they had shocked me. Now they sounded almost clinical. 3 words that had ended almost 3 years together. One of the defense attorneys tried to suggest that fear had distorted my memory. Miss Wade, the situation was extremely chaotic, correct? Yes. You were terrified? Of course. Is it possible Mr. Caldwell simply froze and you misunderstood his reaction? No. You're certain? He wasn't frozen. He spoke. He pointed. He made a choice. The attorney paused. Could he have been acting purely out of panic? Panic doesn't change what he said. I watched him glance down at his notes. He abandoned the question. When I stepped into the courthouse hallway afterward, my hands finally started shaking. I had held myself together through the testimony, but repeating that night had dragged me back into the living room. For a moment, I could almost hear the broken wood again. Then someone said my name. Tammy. I turned. Ethan's father was standing near the wall. I hadn't expected to see him. He looked older than I remembered. Tired somehow, as though the past few weeks had taken something out of him. Can I talk to you? I hesitated, then nodded. He approached slowly. I owe you an apology. I said nothing. When Ethan first told us what happened, he left out the part about pointing at you. That didn't surprise me. His mother and I thought you were throwing him out because he panicked. We thought you were being cruel to someone who just survived something terrible. And now? I read the police report. He glanced toward the courtroom doors. And I heard you today. His expression tightened. I confronted him. What did he say? His father sighed. He still thinks you overreacted. I wasn't surprised. Then he added something that actually stunned me. He said you were stronger than him, that you handle pressure better. He said you had a better chance of surviving if they took you. I stared at him. For several seconds, I genuinely couldn't think of anything to say. Finally, I asked, so because I was more capable, I was the acceptable hostage? I asked him almost exactly that. And? He said that wasn't what he meant. A humorless laugh escaped me. That seems to be Ethan's favorite sentence. His father nodded sadly. I asked him one more question. I asked how he would feel if you had pointed at him. What did he say? He said it wasn't the same. Of course. His father rubbed a hand across his face. I don't understand my son's logic anymore. Neither did I. Maybe there was no logic. Maybe Ethan had simply spent so much time trying to justify one terrible decision that admitting the truth now would mean admitting everything he'd said afterward was also wrong. His father held out his hand. I'm sorry, Tammy. You didn't deserve what happened, and you didn't deserve us blaming you afterward. I shook his hand. Thank you. That apology mattered more than I expected. Not because I needed his approval, because for weeks, Ethan had tried to turn reality into something debatable. His father finally said what Ethan couldn't. It happened. It mattered. And I wasn't cruel for refusing to forget it. That was the last time I saw him. The robbery case ended a few weeks later. All three men were convicted. The leader received 12 years. The others got 8 and 6. I wasn't happy. Nothing about any of this made me happy, but I was satisfied. There was at least a consequence for what they had done. Ethan faced no legal consequences, of course, and he shouldn't have. Being selfish isn't a crime. Betraying someone who trusts you isn't a crime either. Sometimes the consequence is simply that the person finally sees you clearly and leaves. Through mutual friends, I eventually heard Ethan had found another apartment, changed jobs, and started dating someone new. I felt surprisingly little when I heard. No jealousy, no anger, mostly relief that his life was no longer connected to mine. Then, about a week after sentencing, he emailed me. It was long. He said he'd been working on himself, processing his trauma, and finally understood why I had been hurt. He wrote that he regretted what happened and wanted to meet so we could clear the air. For a few minutes, I stared at the message. Months earlier, an email like that would have consumed me. I would have analyzed every sentence, wondered whether he had changed, wondered whether almost 3 years deserved one final conversation. Instead, I deleted it. There was nothing to clear. For the first time since the robbery, everything felt painfully transparent. I replaced the broken back door, upgraded the alarm, added cameras covering every angle of the property. I changed the lighting around the backyard and had the damaged frame reinforced. On paper, the house became safer than it had ever been, but it didn't feel safer. Sometimes I'd wake at 2 in the morning because the refrigerator clicked or a branch scraped against a window. I'd reach for my phone and check every camera. Front porch, driveway, backyard, kitchen entrance. Empty. Everything always looked normal. My body just hadn't learned that yet. So I started therapy. At first, I thought I needed help processing the robbery. Eventually, I realized I spent more time talking about Ethan than the 3 men who had actually broken into my house. That embarrassed me at first. My therapist told me it shouldn't. The robbery taught you strangers could hurt you, she said. Ethan taught you someone you trusted might not protect you when it mattered. That stayed with me. She asked whether there had been warning signs. I hated that question because it made me search backward. And there were little things. Times Ethan made decisions that benefited him and called them decisions for us. Times I compromised while he expected me to. Times my money, my house, and my time became ours whenever he needed something, but his sacrifices were always negotiable. Once, months before the robbery, we'd argued because he wanted his name on the deed. You keep calling this our home, he'd said, but legally it's still yours. I had answered without thinking. Because I bought it. He didn't speak to me for half the evening. At the time, I thought it was just an argument about commitment. Now I wondered whether what bothered him wasn't the paperwork. Maybe it was hearing that something in our relationship existed that he couldn't claim as his. None of those moments seemed dramatic then. None of them screamed, "One day this man will point at you." Maybe that's why betrayal hurts so much. The final moment rarely comes completely from nowhere. Sometimes you just don't understand the earlier moments until afterward. I don't hate Ethan. Hating him would mean carrying him with me. I simply don't trust him anymore. And I'm not dating yet. Friends have tried setting me up. I've declined. Maybe eventually. For now, I'm rebuilding the part of my life. No contractor, police officer, judge, or security company can repair for me. My sense of safety. The strange thing is, my security system worked perfectly that night. The silent alarm brought the police. The cameras helped the investigation. The locks and sensors did exactly what I'd paid them to do. They protected me from the people who broke into my house. But no alarm warned me about the man sitting beside me on the couch. No camera could tell me what he would do when someone forced him to choose between us. It took 3 armed strangers to reveal that. Sometimes I still think about those few seconds. The robber asking us to choose. Me turning toward Ethan. My mind already preparing to protect him. and Ethan raising his hand. He didn't need minutes to decide. He barely needed seconds. He pointed at me. Take her. The robbers entered my house that night. The police eventually took them away. The broken door was replaced. The bruises disappeared. The locks changed. Almost everything damaged that night could eventually be repaired, except the version of Ethan I had believed in. That person disappeared the second his finger pointed toward me, and maybe that was the hardest thing to accept. The men wearing masks were exactly what they appeared to be. Ethan was the only person in that room whose mask came off.